about just work-life balance and the blurred lines that we've already had, and we work hard to detach and isolate and disconnect, but now it's just so interwoven and connected when your office space is your home front space. And then on top of it, if you're a parent, also helping to homeschool your kids, being your primary caretaker for your children, especially with the little ones too, there's a lot to factor in. Maybe it's also taking care of your neighbors or aging parents, or even, or yourself. There's a lot for us to factor in what makes up a day in our lives these days. So Tracey and Wendy came up with this brilliant idea of starting to think more about self-care and how parents can start a conversation in our community. And I think the other piece of this too is that we have to think a lot about, as arts, putting on our arts educator hats, we have to think a lot about homeschooling now and who are teaching our children, and what that responsibility looks like. And we also have to think a lot about equity. What about the kiddos that are on their own, whose parents have to go out, still have to work outside of the home space? What does their learning look like? These are really important issues for us, and we'll certainly be addressing those equity issues with more specificity on our Friday Zoom chats, which Clarissa Hartsfield leads for us, that will always have an equity focus. But for today, let's talk a bit about parents and homeschooling and what that looks like. And also what kind of self-care are we taking for ourselves. So I, not being a parent, don't want to be the one to start this conversation either. But I just wanted to say an overall welcome and hello to everybody, because these are really important conversations for us. I will give you a little bit of housekeeping just as a reminder. We record all of these sessions. They are logged and archived on DC Collaborative's COVID-19 response section of our website. And there's also there's a button that you can click that goes straight to the Zoom chats. We'll be compiling weekly digests of each week's worth of Zoom chats. They now are thematically based, and we hope that this particular conversation is the first of many. So this will be the first conversation that will be recorded. We can share this widely and start to bring in even more stakeholders from our parent community. But we wanted to start first with some very special friends of ours who have worked in the space for many years, and many years with the collaborative. But I'll first start with if Tracey can kick off the conversation and introduce everyone. I'm just helping there are some folks here that looks like are having some hard times getting onto Zoom. So I'll take care of that, Tracey,
okay.
So you can start the meeting.
Sure. So I thought that we could all go around, and I think we're a small enough group where we can all, share some of our personal challenges, either with work-life balance in general during this time, or your experiences as a parent. I wanted to start off because I wanted to make space for everyone to get personal if we want. I mean, it is a work call. My boss is on the line, but we have a very supportive environment, and I just wanted to start off by saying that. And I chatted with a few of the attendees here when I first became a mom, and trying to figure out how to, it's really hard, even pre-quarantine, to figure out your new life. Now my son is 20 months old. He's almost a 2-year-old. I think the terrible twos might have come early though, honestly, given these last couple of weeks. But maybe I can start off with how our personal schedule works. My husband is a guitarist. He teaches mostly after school, and he used to gig, sometimes multiple gigs on one day on the weekends. So our family dynamic, his job is a lot more flexible. I'm lucky in a lot of ways. He is so supportive, but there are I mean, we don't do everything the same way. And just personally, like being all in the same house at the same time with the baby, I'm snapping a lot more than I usually would. And you know, the mom guilt that I feel is almost exemplified. You know, but pre-quarantine, I felt guilty when I was at work that I wasn't, you know, at home. And then when I was at home, I'd feel guilty that I wasn't working enough personally. So it's only exemplified now because I can hear them in the other room, and I'm, you know, still in this room working. And Lissa's great about a flexible schedule. I work 7 to 3, and then he does then my husband Chris does Skype lessons, usually 3 till 8 every day. But you know, it's hard hearing them. I, you know, have been promoting our distance learning resource database, and I've used it twice myself in these last 3 weeks. So I know that, and when I am trying, it's really time management. I was talking with Wendy about this and prioritizing everything. And I am super close with my family in general, even though we're all far apart. And I want to say that family is my first priority, but I do feel that I am choosing work most of the day. And I, you know, personally, like I feel a little bad about that. But yeah, our schedule is working. I think we're in a little bit more of a groove, and I'm luckier than a lot of people. I do want to recognize my privilege that I am able to stay home, get a lot of work done, and, you know, be with my family. So I am very lucky in a lot of ways, but yeah, I still do feel that guilt. So I think, oh, and so to end on a positive note, like the self-care wins, I've been doing like lavender baths and stuff. I've also like taken a lot of walks with Alec and stuff like that, and was able to use the distance learning database a couple of times. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share. Wendy, did you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Wendy. I don't know how many of you actually knows me. I've been working on the collaborative since November, and I started off part-time and then became full-time around, I think, February this year. Previously, I was working in museums in DC and London, and most recently, I was at the Freer Sackler, the Smithsonian, and it's been a very non-linear kind of path for me in this career, in this field. And I think maybe some of you might be able to relate. And I had a baby about 10 and a half months ago. So my husband and I definitely juggle and hustle every day, trying to work our 2 full-time jobs at home and taking care of a 10, 11 month old. It's definitely been a learning curve. I think it takes a lot of tag teaming and creativity. I don't know how much, like, I don't even really know how to like talk about some of the details, because there's so many things that we're still learning. You know, it's like things that are not consistent. We learn something new every day. And also my baby's learning something new every day. So we're like dealing with different things all the time. So I know that, you know, my colleagues here are all very, very supportive, and I'm glad that we have this opportunity today to get together and just have an open discussion about all of this. And Tracey was talking about self-care. Well, this past weekend, I made a very deliberate decision to dye my hair. So I spent about an hour doing that, and I consider that self-care. You know, I put on a mask, I did my hair, and it's a decision that I had to make sure that I get that time to myself. And, that might manifest itself as like, a bubble bath, or I don't know, exercise or something for other people. So I'm open to new ideas. Yeah, but nice to meet everybody here, by the way.
Jeanette, you're at the top left of my screen. Would you like to go next?
Sorry. Yeah, sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. Name's Jeanette Mccune. Most of you know me from my work at the Kennedy Center, and interestingly, I am actually furloughed. I'm on my second day of a furlough status at the Kennedy Center, but I'll speak to the 3 weeks that have been very exciting in terms of the work-life balance during the time that I was still working full-time at home. And I'll just maybe just speak a little bit about what it's like in general in the work-life balance for me in a position that is one that has been pretty intense. It is an intense position. It's one that there is a lot of carryover between your day and your night, your weekends, and all of the other things. There's not really, especially in arts education, I believe, and arts and humanities education, there's not a fine line between you work from 8:30 to 5 and then it's done, and then you don't work on the weekends, or that you don't work when you're on vacation and all of those other things. So I've tried to work on all that balance all along. But in addition to that, I have a 12-year-old son who has autism and ADHD in a public school environment, whose schedule has been upended significantly. And I also have a 14-year-old daughter who is also a volleyball player and who has usually an extremely robust schedule. And for those two young people to have their lives really turned upside down, and to try to maintain this idea of normalcy when we're not in a normal time. This is a really traumatic time, and I think we have to be mindful of that. This idea that the kids have a schedule that has immediately been put in place, or somehow they're going to translate what's happened at school and have that be in place at home, while parents are also dealing with their share of uncertainty, what's going to happen, what does it mean for us all to be in the same space together, to work respectfully together, but also to meet their needs. My husband is also working from home, and he has a position that's most of the time he doesn't do at home, so he's had to figure out how to translate his work as a public servant. He's an urban planner, but now to be at home and to be able to serve the public, do the work that he normally does, and support the kids. So it's a lot. I think any of us here would say that irrespective of our children's ages, trying to be mindful and respectful of what their needs are, understanding what has been asked of them in terms of independent study, while also being mindful of the fact that you need to be there for them, because now the mentor, the support, the coach that is their classroom educator isn't there. I'll talk first about my daughter, who's the 14-year-old and plays volleyball. So up until March 13th, she was going to school. We were leaving for school at 5:45 in the morning. Or sorry, leaving at 6:45. 5:45 so we had to get up. 6:45 heading out, and sometimes not getting home until 11 o'clock, because not only was she going to school and staying for aftercare, she would sometimes come with me to the Kennedy Center and we'd hang out, and then we would go to volleyball practice, which sometimes wouldn't end until 10 o'clock, and not get home till 11. And the whole thing would start over again several times a week. I just mention that because during that time she was doing homework after school. I would support her. We would sit in, my space, and I would work with her on that. My husband was working more with my son because they were the ones that were at home. But now you're talking about somebody who's had that entire structure really gone. Those outlets of physical activity, the outlets of having peer engagement and a face-to-face, as well as all of the support systems that happen at school, those have really been upended. So part of the job in the transition is just checking in. What could be translated into an online format? She, as a volleyball player that plays in a club sport, they've continued doing Zoom exercise classes, conversations with analysis of games that have been done previously. So some of those constructs have helped. We as a family have also started getting engaged in doing activities together. So last night we went out and peppered. For those of you who know volleyball, we're out actually, as the whole family of 4, we're doing practicing and sharing the ball outside in an open space. We are very privileged to be in a gated community where we have space to do that. And so that was something that was really helpful. The other thing is that even though the normal schedule was so long, we immediately shifted and said, this does not make sense to get up as early as you had been, or to be having education from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. Her school is one that actually provided digital resources. So the kids all have an iPad. The teachers established times that they check in at the beginning of class, and they do some class discussion, but they've reduced the total amount of time the kids are online. I thought that has been incredibly helpful. And the other piece is that, there have been some areas of the kids, having an opportunity to lead discussion. So the way that they're mentoring and working as a team has been really powerful. As a family, when she's done with that, I actually encourage her to get offline. I think it's a good idea to just get some more rest. The kids have a lot going on. And so a normal day that's such a long one, we've really encouraged doing games, conversation, and just introspection. Taking naps, things that you think a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old might not need, this time I've thought has been really helpful. Now, I just want to speak a little bit about my son because his experience is very different. So we live in Prince George's County. I stated at the beginning that he is a student with autism and ADHD. He's used to having an aide in class. He is in a co-taught general education curriculum. As far as his academic ability, he's very strong, but the areas where he needs support is executive function and management. And so having a curriculum that is in most cases using Google Classroom, teachers can check in and work with the students, but they are not doing synchronous learning. The packets are there, the homework is there, the teachers are there to respond to questions, but really we as parents have to do a quick assessment of the assignment, review with him, and help him plan his day. So sometimes that looks like a little bit of side-by-side support. My job has really moved into being almost the aide or my husband to say, okay, let's review what it is that you need to work on. Let's make some time blocks of when that'll happen. And then using the IEP as a guide, considering when he needs some natural breaks. Now for him, going to school, usually he leaves and gets on the bus at 10 of 8, we have decided to let him sleep in. For his natural needs, he does much better with a later start time. So in fact, now he doesn't have to get up until 10:30, 11. I should also mention my son grew 6 inches over the last year and a half. So he is going through a tremendous growth spurt and he's more tired. So we've also looked at this time to assess how is he better served by having a later start time, chunking the day out so he has physical breaks during the course of the day, and then also working on some home skills, like during this time teaching him how to do laundry, teaching him how to use certain things like in the kitchen, doing some cooking skills, and then also supporting some of the social development areas. So those are some big strategies we've focused on. He is also doing music therapy through Levine, and that was huge to shift from having an in-person therapeutic session to one that's online. And I'll just mention this because I thought it was really powerful. The first session, we have several instruments at home, but not the one that he's been working on. And so when his teacher came on, it was really difficult for him to participate in the therapeutic session without that instrument, which was a big part. So I quickly did an assessment now the expectation is I'm in the room. And that's also interesting to the dynamic because usually the therapeutic session happens, but the parent's not there. So I kind of coached him and we talked about the fact that I'm in the room, but he's really engaging with the therapist. And I also talked with the therapist about what instruments he had at home. We figured out we had an instrument in common, which is a ukulele. And so now they're working on the ukulele together. But between the first session and the second session, it made a huge dynamic shift because he can watch and mirror and engage with him in a way with the instrument that he wasn't able to do when it was mostly talking. So I've had so much learning over these last few weeks. I would certainly say that being flexible, being present, but also understanding while you're balancing your own work, not really working on not feeling as guilty, just saying, you know what, this is a time of trauma. It's a trauma that we are all experiencing. This idea of normal, whether we're working or not, is sort of a faulty construct. And I highly encourage us to stop thinking that way. And I'd say as far as self-care goes, allowing myself to cry if I need to. And yes, I think that's a real thing. Acknowledging some of the pain and just suffering of others that have even less privilege than any of us have, but also finding a place of hope. Those moments outside, taking a walk in the middle of the day, things that I didn't normally do, being mindful of doing having some healthier food, taking the time to make a smoothie, enjoy the time with each other. My husband and I have also been able to spend much more time together, just being gentle and kind to each other. Even if your home time of holding hands and watching a TV show, it's okay. Those things are really critical. And I have found that despite some of the challenges that are going on, it's actually brought my family closer. So that degree of self-care, I think, has been huge, and I'm grateful for being able to find that silver lining in it. So I'll stop there because I could talk about this all day, but I can't wait to hear what my colleagues have to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeanette. Cynthia, would you like to go next?
Sure. As my family keeps walking in and out of the space that I'm trying to do this in. So I would say that, so I have 2 children. They're both girls, ages 11 and almost 9. Hold on one second. No, I do not have any. I don't know what you need. She's asking me for something. Who knows what? No. Safety pins? Can you, I have to talk right now. Can Daddy help you? Sorry. So they both have ADHD. My oldest one has, there are 2 different types of ADHD, or 3, I think. So the oldest one is unfocused, which means she has a really hard time sustaining attention on anything. The youngest one is more hyperactive. So it's really hard to get her to settle down and do things without a whole lot of support and a whole lot of discussion back and forth as to, and I call it discussion, but it's not really, why she needs to do what she needs to do. So it's been pretty overwhelming because as they're in Arlington Public Schools and we've been off, I think this is our 4th week. Right now they're on spring break, but the first 3 weeks there was no real plan in place because APS was taking this week of spring break to figure out their plan. So it's been really challenging for both of them. I'd say the 11-year-old does much better because she's older. So they get their work instructions via an app called Seesaw, and she's able to do her work for the most part. But as Jeanette mentioned, without us going and reading it and really making sure that she's paid attention to detail, she often misses a lot of things that she's supposed to be doing. So she'll think she has completed all her work for the day, and I'll go back at the end of the day and read it, and there will be at least 3 things that she didn't notice she needed to do. So that's been a little difficult because on days where I do have to work full time, so on the days where I have a lot of video conferences or a lot of work that I need to produce, it's I have to choose between who am I gonna help her? Ooh, it's making me feel a little upset. So that's been hard. And then with the little one, it's just everything is an explosion. So she breezes through whatever work she thinks she needs to do. Anyway.
Completely empathize with you all, and making these choices are very hard. I don't have young children at home, so my scenario is different, but I have a lot of empathy. My scenario is one where I have aging parents that we have to care for and are just as demanding of your time and attention. And in fact, my spouse's father fell in the middle of the night last night, and this is not unusual for him, but it's scary every time it happens. And there's been a lot of drama around that, and it disrupts our workflow too. And then I'm compelled to help Mark help his parents, and it's hard for all of us, and everyone is scared. And I'm sure, one thing I'm curious to know more about from you all too is, just how are your kids processing this? Because I wonder what it feels like through the lens of a child. What does this experience feel like other than all of the disruptions? But what are they thinking? Do they talk about future? Are they sharing fears? Are they processing it that way? What does it feel like?
I think it hit my 11-year-old because she's in 5th grade.
Okay, yeah.
Last Friday, she was like, "You mean I'm not going to get to ever go back to my school?" Because she's going to level up to middle school. And I think that really upset her, that she wouldn't get to end the year with her friends and with her teacher. And I think it's overwhelming her to feel like suddenly she's going to be in middle school and she has, she still feels like a little kid and she doesn't want to. So it's really been hard, I think, she keeps a lot inside 'cause she's very introverted, but I think that when it suddenly hit her that she's not, she was like, well, what about all my library books? What are you going to do with those? And I was like, don't worry, we'll get those back to the school. It's okay. So I think that was hard. I think the lack of structure is really hard, especially for children who do have who need things, special needs. So both my oldest daughter has an IEP for math on top of her ADHD, and I think it's the lack of structure makes it really difficult for them. They don't understand why we're even trying to get them to sit. They tell me it's not school, or it's really hard for them. And so that makes it harder for us, I think. All right, I'm going to be quiet now.
Well, I can jump in there. Good morning, everybody. It's nice. It actually is really nice to see all of your faces, though I have to admit, I am tired of Zoom meetings. Are you all tired of Zoom meetings? My name is Michelle. I have 2 children, a girl and a boy. Actually, Jeanette and our kids are almost exactly the same age. I have a 14-year-old daughter. She'll be 15 this month, and she's a freshman. And my son, Max, is 12, and he's a 6th grader, and they go to school in Fairfax County. So we are home together. My husband and I are separated, so I'm the primary caregiver here, which is an entirely different experience for me too. And so it's interesting to hear all of this perspective. There's so much that is the same in these stories. I count myself very lucky. My kids are very independent. They are really self-driven. And so as far as the schoolwork, and we haven't had anything officially, much like Arlington County. This is week 4 for us, technically spring break. So there's no work assigned this week. There have been suggested lessons that the kids could find on Google Classroom for the past 3 weeks. And if they did it, great. And if not, okay. So we are actually anticipating another change next week when we have to be more structured in our school and work day. Fairfax County is releasing an interesting combination of asynchronous days and then a couple of days each week that are going to be synchronous learning, where they'll have actual class schedules. And like Max will have 40 minutes, like his odd day will happen on Wednesdays, and the even day will happen on Thursdays. So we'll have another transition next week where we figure out how that all goes down. I will shift my computer around. We have, as part of our plan for this, completely changed our house around. So the room I'm in used to be our dining room, and now it's an office space and desks for the kids. And so we decided here, we have the fortune of space and the fortune of having this kind of furniture we can shift around, but we created this room to be the work zone so that we can leave it rather than just spreading out. Now we'll see how that all goes when we're all 3 on classes or Zoom calls and our open workspace here. But it's been interesting for us to think about how we're going to support each other. The kids are now calling their school their work. So they're going to go to work next week along with me. In the meantime, we have structured days because my kids, for the first week we were off, they enjoyed the time away. We slept in, they slept in, but then we're kind of feeling logy and cranky by the end of each day. And so we decided together that is a list of things they check off every day, including they each have to walk the dog at least once. They have to, here, I wrote down the list so I wouldn't forget. Everybody has to do chores. So this is contributing to our family life and part of the family work. They don't get paid or allowances for this. This is just part of being here. So everybody contributes to the chores. Max plays the accordion. He still is taking lessons on a weekly basis, so he has to practice every day, which is normal. That's continuing normalcy. They both have to spend time creating something, and I don't care what that is. It can be cooking a new recipe, drawing a picture. Sarah likes to bullet journal, so creating every day. We are disciplining ourselves to exercise every day, whether it's going out walking or playing catch in the yard, etc. What else? Oh, we have implemented at least 20 minutes a day of reading. And that's good for all of us, because once we all sit down with our books at various times, then we get lost in it and it becomes a pleasure. And then after those things are checked off, then they have screen time. And that's where the social media part, I have to admit, I think our kids are a little bit better prepared for this scenario, because at least my two children do a lot of their socializing all the time on the screen. And so they've been able to continue some of their regular relationships with their kids, and even a couple of teachers who have been really proactive about reaching out, which is wonderful. And though I don't love that they're spending a lot of time on their screens, this is the world we're living in. Obviously, this is how we're conducting this meeting. So we're trying to find balance of when that happens during the day. I will say I'm very lucky. My kids start to recognize when they're feeling dopey from screen time and, come and say, Mom, tell me to put it down. And so I still have to be the heavy, but there are times when they ask for it. And so that's really interesting. And this whole experience has also made me think about the people we're serving. We are so privileged here to have, each of us have our own device. I know a lot of families don't have that. I was talking to a colleague this morning who, for now, until they're able to go pick up an additional resource from their elementary school, they have one Chromebook for multiple kids to use. And so even when thinking about their learning time and their class schedule, when things are happening simultaneously, they have to pick and choose which kid gets the Chromebook to do their synchronous learning that day. And so it's something that I get to recognize my privilege and my good fortune of having those things, but also going back professionally makes me think about how we choose to support that kind of home, or how our work can be better aligned so that it can happen at any time of day. What else was I thinking about? As far as self-care goes, I feel like this meeting is a form of self-care for me, just hearing that other people are experiencing the same. We use a lot of essential oils in our household, whether it's for natural cleaning, but also the aromatherapy and the idea that, we're taking care of ourselves in that way. I will tell you, I still get up at my regular 5:50 every day because I love the quiet. I love to have some time to myself with my cup of coffee where nobody is asking me to serve them, help them, sign into a meeting. I have found that for me, the self-care happens when I get out of bed. And so I've disciplined myself to continue to set the alarm, let the kids sleep in. And then usually the dog's the first one that bothers me in the morning, and I can handle that because that's what dogs do. So it's been an interesting time, and I'm, much like Tracey said, very, very close with my family. I have 3 sisters and spread across the country, at least the eastern side, and parents. And so we spend time together online, FaceTime and Zoom chats. And that to me is also self-care, just getting to hear from them. And we're all very grateful so far. Everybody's very healthy and doing our best to stay happy. And I think it's, as far as the workload goes, I feel like I'm working harder than I ever have. The hours are longer. I mean, I worked hard before and the hours were long, but now there's no going home from work. There isn't that sense of release or relief of putting it away. And so that to me, that's the roller coaster. There are some days when I'm feeling very optimistic and like, we got this and we can handle it. And other days when I just think I want to sort of run away and, live in the woods somewhere and come back when it's all done. So I just want to express gratitude to all of you for your honesty and your openness. Encourage these kind of conversations and thinking about how we all continue to live day over day, find new ways to find joy. I'm looking forward to some nice time planting flowers in the near future, planting seeds and seeing how the spring is coming up. That's part of my morning, is looking out and seeing how green keeps emerging, which is also causing allergies and eye issues, but I'm learning to be grateful for that too. But overall, just reminding us that this too shall pass. This is temporary. We're all learning really, really remarkable things that are going to make us better on the other side. And so maybe that's the optimist coming out in me, but it is what keeps me moving forward.
Thank you, Michelle. I think, I don't know how everybody else feels. I like hearing from everybody and having everyone share, even though we've used up most of this hour. We can think about next steps or whatever for next time. But if anyone else wants to, I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to share. Ellen is next on my screen, but you can either raise your hands or write in the chat if you'd like to share, or Ellen, you can go.
Yeah, so sure, thank you. I think there was a point that I've gleaned from some of the other calls that I've been on. So for those of you that don't know me, I am Director of Youth and Family Services at the DC Public Library. We've been going 100 miles an hour since we closed our public building, standing up virtual services. We have a new, our website has been kind of reconfigured for DC Public Library at Home. So a lot of our online resources that we've always really had, we're sort of reframing and pushing out differently. So we recently opened up a chat function on that site because I think the library is often in a place where we are looking at people who aren't as well resourced and who are really looking for help. And one of the real channels are parents that are home, even with material they've received from DCPS or charter schools, and have no idea how to go about beginning even the process of teaching their children. And we're finding that a lot of parents need support and really, from our point, reassurance that there's teaching and there's learning, and that this may be an opportunity when we all begin to rethink about the value of learning and the real value of learning family work. I think it was Michelle that talked about, the work of family and, the struggles that Cynthia's facing. I have children with the same special needs. So boy, it brought me all right back there. They're older now, but it doesn't, I think the challenges are different. But this idea of learning versus teaching, and what was very gratifying to me was I was on a call with an educator. She's a second grade teacher, and she said, I am not teaching my child. I am finding opportunities for him to learn in this space. And I think sometimes the most valuable thing that we can all do in our various channels is reassure parents that the time they're spending with their children now in relationships and learning and looking at those opportunities to help them help you cook dinner and talk about how to measure things and talk about color, the sorts of things that aren't necessarily about the formal supports of the things that the school is sending. It's what you can do, and it's okay. A lot of the world is going to be changed after this, and we're all going to come back, and there's going to be these giant seismic shifts. So none of this is a live or die situation at this point, except the virus, right? So I think reassuring parents that learning is valuable, and that we talk about it when they're babies, they're their first teachers. They're still their best teacher for what's important to them as family, what's important for them culturally. And I think that's what particularly under-resourced families need right now, is just this reassurance that what they can do is valuable because they can do it. And I think the more venue that we have to talk about that, and the more places that we have to really just say it's okay, is really important. So we're working on the best way to do that, because we are also finding that it's very, very difficult now to connect to people who are not connected. We haven't figured that out as completely figured that out as a library or frankly as a society. But, you know, this has taught us that the digital divide is still very real. And while places like the public library are helping, it has not solved this. It's a bigger world problem. So, you know, that's what I think about over here. But then at my other point, I just wanted to say that this is our time to really emphasize that learning versus teaching and the value that families have from just being families.
It's Jeanette, if you don't mind me jumping in for a second. I think the other important thing to remind ourselves, and I really appreciate what you've just said, Ellen, is this idea that people are in crisis. This is not normal times. It's not everything else is going on and the crisis is limited to your family or your situation. It is a global crisis, and people are trying to find normalcy every day. They're trying to find something to hold on to. So the tools and the things that we're talking about, yes, indeed, are critically important. You're trying to create some type of normal environment so that people can not only survive, but find some joy in each day. And so these balances of I feel like we're so busy trying to have the constructs of getting back to the normal that existed pre-COVID-19 on March 13th, when we realized to the degree to what it is. But the urgency to get to that in some ways undermines the critical time that we need to focus on right now, which is caring for each other as human beings. And I would say for me, as a parent, as a wife, as just a human being in this time frame, is also acknowledging that we don't know what new normal is going to be. And I believe it's not going to be as soon as the virus is contained, all those things, it's going to be a while before we define what a new normal is. And acknowledging that that time period is going to be unknown. It's going to take a while, and then we will come to a place that is probably our new normal once we're more aware of the threats that a health crisis could bring, as we try to find economic stability in each of our homes and all of those things. There's even yet more change to come. So every day we're like struggling to try to create this idea of what normal is today, but we don't even know tomorrow if tomorrow's going to be the same as today. So keeping in mind that the world is constantly moving under your feet and that you're trying to manage what you know today. It's like, what do I know at this moment? What are the most critical things that the human beings that I am with, or then the ones that I'm not with, what is the care that they need right now? And how can I be present right now? That's, Cynthia said she felt bad for crying. She sent us a side note. I was like, honey, I feel like crying about every 5 seconds right now because I'm trying to create this idea of what the new normal is, and I don't know. But what I do know is that today we have food. Today we are together. Today everyone is healthy, and I'm going to take that as a win and use that as joy. And whatever normalcy we can create for our families during this time, even if they're having a hard time, yeah, you might yell, maybe you'll go outside of yourself for a minute and you're like, oh man, later, dang it, I probably shouldn't have done that. But we still are trying to help these young people that we're responsible for in the parent mode to still be able to thrive and to know that they have value. So I'm sorry to get on a soapbox, but I really felt like it was important to say that. And I also want to just speak to the fact that as far as checking in with our kids, I check in with my kids each day because I know that they're also, as a 14 and 12-year-olds, they also have access to all the information about COVID. And they're seeing all this information about young people also now getting ill and dying. And what are their questions and concerns about that? So sometimes we just take a time out. Like, how are you feeling right now? What are you concerned about right now? How can I help you? But also, how can I be honest? And how can I use this as a reinforcing moment to remind you that it's important for us to be really careful and to be really grateful for what we have. Let's not do any high risk behaviors. The other day, my son wanted to go out and ride a bike. All I could think was, what if he falls? What if we have to go to the hospital? I don't want that right now. So I had to remind him about, yes, you've got to wear your helmet. Yes, you need to stay within close proximity. We need to do whatever we can also for safety purposes, because we don't want to put ourselves in a situation that we might need medical care when there are people who critically need it. So just even being mindful of those kinds of conversations, I have felt has been really helpful, but continuing to check in, not assuming that yesterday was a good day, so today's a good day, but just continuing to check in and make time for that has also been really helpful for us in the way that we've tried to cope as a family. And also just acknowledging your own vulnerability. And I've definitely shared that with my family too. We're extremely close. And as I said, this time together has brought us closer, but being honest and real, I think is a privilege and an important thing to do with your family that's around you as well.
That was really inspiring, Jeanette. Does anyone else want to share? Even if you're not a parent, if you want to talk about how you're handling the quarantine, that would be great too.
Yeah, I'm not a parent. And I'm kind of in this weird spot of like young, but like have a job, but am, still young. Where I don't know, I'm like in a weird spot where I think I'm at a very early stage. I'm a young professional, and so kind of like just getting adjusted to having a 9 to 5 in general, and in some senses, and just being out of like the school bubble. And so like for this being my first year out of college, and adjusting to having a job, like this is kind of like putting a interesting spin on things. And then like also like feeling like I need to focus on just like saving money, but also paying off these student loans and, so many other things that I have to focus on at the same time. And while also just adjusting to focusing on my career. And so it's been a lot. It's been a lot of adjustment, especially for me. I think for me, the Zoom calls have been hard. I've been in Zoom calls since about 8:45 this morning, and I still have like 2 left for the day. And so I know there'll be another 3 hours or so of me just on camera, just like this. And so I think it's becoming a little exhausting for me, definitely at times. And I think, yeah, it's hard to I think also seeing so many different stories. I think I'm going on Facebook and just seeing, how many of my friends have been directly affected by this, losing grandparents and uncles and cousins to this disease, starting to make it a little more real, I think, seeing how many people are close in my circle who have been affected by this directly. I was having a chat with some of my friends from college in my graduating class, and out of the 16 of us in my major who graduated last year, we all had jobs about 2 months ago, and now only 2 of us have jobs. And just kind of like for them, that also sense of kind of anxiety of being, out of school and not really being able to turn to school for some type of structure, but not being able to turn to a job for some type of structure either, is really hard. So yeah, I don't really know. Just trying to find some just normalcy to my day to day. I feel like all of the days are blending together. I feel like the past 3 weeks feels like, 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, just like repeating over and over and over again. And it's hard to kind of like Saturday doesn't feel like Saturday, Sunday doesn't feel like Sunday, Wednesday doesn't feel like Wednesday. It all feels like Tuesday at 3.
I would jump in there. I got to tell you, I'm living for Saturdays and Sundays because for the first time in years and years, I turn off the work. I turn it off. And so for us, that is a coping mechanism that weekends have become sacred. And I think Jeanette referred to it early on in the call that a lot of the work we do doesn't end. We have evenings, weekends, lots of time spent. But I will tell you, Saturday and Sunday, I live for it. I live for the time when I don't have to think about work. Though I also need to say I am so grateful that I have the job and have something to work hard for. So I know that I can support and continue to support my family financially. But yeah, it's interesting to find that pattern in the day-to-day, also recognizing that weekends are important.
Yeah, I think too, it's hard to find that time to unplug for me. Like, cause it's always here. Like my workspace is my home space, is my everything space. And so like finding time to like it's so tempting to check the email again. It's so tempting to text or to call if you have a question about something. So for me too, on the weekends even, it's like trying to make sure that space is that. But even during my workday, like I had to turn my camera off because like my mom was calling to ask me something, and then the car dealership was calling to ask me something, and then at the same time I'm sending an email. And so it's like everything is kind of blending together, and it's confusing to see what's where and how to compartmentalize things. Even like eating, like it's like I think some people are either like eating all the time or like not eating, and I feel like I'm like on the not eating end of like I'm working, and the kitchen is 3 feet away, but like it's almost noon and the only thing I've had today is a cup of coffee. And so like having to like remind myself to like, yeah, like you got to get up and get breakfast and get lunch and not just like dive in because I can easily just lean over the bed and pick up my laptop and start work. And then like today, it's like you just keep going and going and going until you find that break, but that break doesn't come until like 2:00.
I just want to add, so Trey started at the collaborative on February 10th. So when all of this COVID started, he had a month under his belt, and he built a distance learning resource database in a week. And Trey, you have done a fabulous job. So thank you for everything. And yes, please eat your meals. I used to do that too, though, but please do that.
Yes, I second that, Troy. Please eat your meals. Just coming from a mother, please be reminded eating is very important.
You can even eat, like yesterday, I think my lunch was grapes, one of those hummus with the pretzel things, and like an iced tea. So just like, even like snacks, but healthy snacks can be your meal.
Yeah, I've been I need to go back grocery shopping, but I'm also getting tired of cooking, like I'm not with my meals every single day. And so today might be a treat me day.
Grapes don't require cooking. That's why I don't cook. Grapes and hummus. No cooking involved.
That's true. That's true.
Forgive me, but I don't have my camera on. This is Shekinah Hockenhall. I am the All City Programs Coordinator for the musicianship. And I really, I guess, feel connected to Trey's story. I am a young professional. I've only been in my position since December. And my family has been affected by the coronavirus. I'm kind of in isolation. I'm away from home. I of course quarantining. I live by myself. And so I really only had like human interaction through Zoom meetings and through what I've considered to be a huge part of my self-care during this process. I've actually been doing Zoom meetings with my family. And not just like my immediate family, but like my cousins, like from other states. Like we have a family call. And at first it's like, I don't want to do this, but my mother pressured me to, and it has been really helpful. We do it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5:30. And it honestly like has helped me get through these past couple of weeks in like a very real way. So I don't know if like anybody would want to try that, but I highly suggest doing that. Even if you just do it with your girlfriends. I've also done that too, where I got with my friends and we watched a Netflix movie. There's an extension that you can add where you can actually talk to each other through Netflix. So yeah, just making time to still have your familial and friendship relationships during this time is also really important too, I think, for my self-care. But yeah.
I think my family's been doing the same thing. And the thing that I keep thinking about too is Easter's coming up this week. And, the thought of not being able to have Easter dinner with my family is like, I don't know how else that really hits home for me. My great grandmother it turns 90 this year, and she cooks Easter dinner every year for us. And, we all come together, and that's like a big thing for us. And so, to think that I'm going to be trying to make my great grandmother's recipes at home and just talking to her over Zoom is a little heartbreaking for me. As we start to get into like the summer and the holidays.
Yeah, I definitely feel that.
So we're at noon. We can still keep sharing if you want, or maybe everyone should go eat their lunch so we all remember to eat. But if you would like to keep sharing, that'd be fine with me. I could stay on for a little bit longer.
Yeah, and we'll definitely take some pulse surveys from y'all about how can we continue this conversation? Would you like to have more of these sessions where it is this type of sharing? How do we frame it to reach more parents? How do we make recommendations to ourselves and to our colleagues about the type of arts and humanities education programming offerings we're thinking about if we're creating anything new that maybe have more family focus? That could be something that could become a very good conversation moving forward too. But I like the idea of community care conversations for sure. Yes, definitely, Jeanette. Is there anyone else that wants to share some more? This has been really healthy, I think, for us to share this way and to get to know each other. We work so closely together, and we really do care about each other as a community, but really feeling that we can share all facets of our life now this way, I find this very remarkable, and I really appreciate you all even more than ever before. So yeah, thank you. This has been very helpful for me too.
Thank you so much for having this space. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I do like the different perspectives, like Jeanette said. I think that it is very important. We do want to continue to think about parent focus too, but as far as self-care for us in the field, our space, the collaborative can make this day, Tuesdays, be open to that moving forward. So.
And I see
Yeah.
Andrea on the line.
Oh, Andrea, yeah.
Teacher. So maybe a teacher self-care at a different time or something. That might be we could do it as a happy hour or something after you're all done, something like that. But that would be cool.
Mm-hmm. Also, Shakina, I love the idea of watching a movie together. I didn't even think of that on Zoom chat.
Yeah,
cool.
It's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great idea, because I have to tell you, as much as Zoom chat has been this amazing connector, I'm even getting fatigued with it. The first 2 weeks, my husband and I were doing these bubble happy hours, opening it up for everyone to come participate and join us. And then also I was the one in my family that set up my family Zoom chats. It was all on me, and I was just getting really tired being the social director of everything. And I kind of crashed a little last week. So I do like the idea of maybe just sitting peacefully together watching a movie, because I'm always compelled to be the one like, okay, what are we gonna do next? Oh, it's quiet. Let's get people talking. Tell me your favorite joke. Like, I felt like I was on as if I was working all the time, even with my family Zoom chats. So I like the idea of a Netflix party, just sharing, and everyone can be at peace too.
So I actually recently started watching Sex in the City again, and this is something that I used to watch all the time when I was single and younger.
Yes.
And so what I've done is I DIY'd this like canopy out of an old bed sheet over Ada's playpen, so that she would not be watching it with me. And I would do this on the weekends when Mike is out biking, and that's his self-care. So I feel like at least, we're getting some levels of evenness here, when we're both taking care of ourselves.
I love it. And what a great series. Yeah, I lived in New York during that time, and I'd always make fun of that show. And I knew Sarah Jessica Parker then. I was doing a lot of work with her and her assistant. But so I was sort of like, But then I have to tell you, once I left New York, I love that show now. And I think it's a great idea to binge watch that show. It's a lot.
It's very entertaining.
It is. It really is. Yeah, it's a great show. It's fun. Yeah. I like what you did. You have to show us the canopy. That sounds cool.
I'll send a picture later.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share? I have found that I am beyond exhausted, and I do have a hard time cutting it off, but it has been really wonderful to spend more time with my husband, and I'm just grateful that we actually are getting along and we get along with each other, because not everyone may be experiencing that all the time. Or if we do get upset, we just let it go, because we're realizing nothing really can get you that upset right now. I mean, there are some other people, and I know that unfortunate, because I do have other friends that are may not be in places where they feel healthy or comfortable, and to feel trapped right now in their living situation, that's not a good thing. So I am super grateful that, at least on the home front, I know that we're doing a lot to take care of ourselves, and we're being thoughtful and respectful of each other. It could have gone the other way, but I'm grateful it's going that way. And I'm working really hard to make sure that is the case. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work.
I was going to say, even in limited space, I didn't talk about this earlier, but just giving yourself space to go, even if it's like a corner. I'm laughing. I mean, we have a pretty good sized house, but if people want to be on their own, we also really try to respect that, because it is a lot of hours of being together, but not trying to structure every minute. Like if somebody wants to go in their little space and just listen to music or put their headphones on, sometimes we're all in the same room, but even if that person needs that moment, we've really tried to be mindful of it in all of our different personality types. Those will really come out to play. And so being mindful of that, that one person might just need to not be a part of everything right now, because they need to have that moment of self-care for them, which might be just a bit of quiet or reading or whatever it needs to be. So I think that's helped us maintain not being too frustrated with each other. Like you say, learning to let it go is an important thing, but also recognizing and seeing what people's cues and signs are if they need something different.
I've been surprised at how often we all end up in the same room doing 3 different things, or everybody has headphones in, but we all end up in the same space. And it's kind of funny how that happens.
Listen, that's happening at our house too, Michelle.
I wish it was happening at my house. The problem, our house is very small. My oldest daughter's more of an introvert, so she loves to find her little hidey hole to put her headphones on and read. But my little one cannot stand not being around people, and she cannot stand not interacting with people. So that becomes overwhelming, because then she has this like insatiable need to be around her older sister. And then it has to be either me or my husband being with her so that she can have it's been really difficult because their house is so small. On Saturday or Sunday, I took the dog for a walk, and like after the end of my walk, I sat on my front steps because I didn't want to go back in the house yet. So I just sat out there with the dog. I felt like a teenager not wanting to go into my house.
I'm laughing, Cynthia, because my dad used to sit in the car and listen to the radio.
Yep, that was me.
Get away from our family. We're so many people. He's like, I was like, where's my dad? He's out in the car listening to the radio.
The dog was like, "What? We're not going in. We're not going in yet." And I was like, "No, we're gonna be here, the front lawn. That's what we're doing right now."
I don't know if anybody else has done this, but if you do have a car, the kids didn't go in anywhere, but we just took a drive. Now, we did it on Saturday, even though I know all the rules came out, but we just took a drive and looked around and then went back in the house. But it was a nice just change of scenery. But we didn't do any risky behaviors. We kept our windows up, all that stuff. If it doesn't become such a thing that it gets a really high level of looking down at that is a nice way if you have that option, in addition, of course, to just going outside and walking.
Yeah, I agree. We went for a ride last Saturday to the Eastern Shore, and it was just beautiful and eerie and strange. And then they put the orders in, and we actually did go for a little ride as well on Sunday, even though we probably shouldn't have. And we had a whole plan that we were going to say we were looking for toilet paper, because we thought, okay, if we get pulled over, someone will, maybe
we went to get takeout in Annapolis. Okay, that was my rule. And then I was like, well, we could just take a longer ride and drive the scenic way, which we did.
Yeah.
And breaking the rules, technically.
Yeah, exactly. Because technically we could just say that. And if we are fortunate enough to have the car and do that, I did feel safe in the car. I have to say, I had these little to-go cups that I happened to have in the pantry. I totally forgot I had them. And so I went and made myself a little coffee and put it in the to-go cup. And we sat in the car and I drank out of the to-go cup, and it felt good. And I definitely felt like, okay, this is nice. And it got out of the house. Yeah. Just that walk, getting out if you can, it's so important. But yeah, those rides maybe we shouldn't be.
They can be short ones. Doesn't have to be the big one.
Right. It's not like we were on like a day trip or anything, for sure. Yeah. It helps though. It was nice to get out. Also, how about for those of us, we all have some sort of personal creative drives and talents. I mean, that's what brought us into our work. Have you all been able to find time for yourself to do that? Have you not had the urge to do that? That happens too. I'm just curious.
I've become the weird lady that dance walks her dog through the neighborhood.
Nice.
So that's what I'm doing.
My husband is trying to teach me the ukulele, but we barely have time. So I'm sure his middle school students are better than me. But yeah, I do dance parties with Alec, my baby. So in the kitchen, so that's fun.
We definitely do dance parties at our house and with myself in the kitchen. So obviously having the whole thing with my job last week and things changing was incredibly stressful. I chose to start playing my piano again, even though it was a small thing, which was a win for me. And then doing these Zoom Zumba classes, which is hilarious. I do not leave the camera on. I do not need anybody seeing me misstep a million times, but that's been really good just to kind of keep, and even before, once we found out and all those things were going on, I was still dealing with that. I mean, I was still doing that. But my daughter has also started doing more drawing again. At school, she gets to do it for art, but now she's doing some of the assignments, but she's also doing projects on her own. And my son's been doing more the research things he likes. So we've tried to make sure I love the idea of making sure you have that create time. We're not saying it's the requirement, but we're encouraging it. And then they're doing it, with preteens and teens, it's so hard. If you tell them to do something, they most of the time want to do the opposite. So sometimes I just try to do by example.
Yep.
And then just get out of the way. But not telling folks to do it seems to go a long way for us.
Yeah, we have that checklist. I can't tell you the number of days where they don't really check the things off, but at least they're thinking about it. And they have stopped coming to me and saying, I'm bored, what's next?
Oh God.
It's a perfect idea to have that. Ugh, I hate the word bored. Ugh.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Has anybody else found it therapeutic to clean? I have been, oh my God. and sitting here in your house and noticing all the stuff, these stupid dust bunnies and or I went through a drawer and found all these clothes the kids don't wear anymore or stuff I don't like anymore. And I was like, really? That now maybe I can just organize and get rid of some of that. But that sense of accomplishment and trying to have a little bit of normalcy there. It doesn't have to be a lot. I know, Michelle, I think you said you still get up super early. I do also, for that same reason, for that quiet time. And I find that cleaning and doing that early while everybody is sleeping is my quiet time. Sometimes I listen to music, but that's ordering my thoughts and getting myself just in a calmer space.
I ordered a Tupperware organizer and definitely sanitized it and everything, but it made me feel so much better. And I like Shakina's comment about the spice cabinet. Yeah.
So Shakina, did that inspire you to cook something different and new from the spices as you were cleaning it out?
Oh yeah, it's actually Shekinah. I'm sorry.
Shekinah. Oh my gosh, Shekinah.
It's totally fine. But yeah, I actually really have been enjoying cooking. I feel like I'm going to get to the place where I'm annoyed by it, but so far I've enjoyed making homemade soups, which are perfect for this time. And I discovered that I had spices from 2017. And I'm like, how did this travel to this apartment with me? Because I definitely just moved, but that's beside the point. Trying new recipes and really trying to make healthy things has been fun for me. So really challenging myself to use this time to create a routine that is healthier. It has been kind of fun. So yeah.
I don't know what I was talking about the cleaning. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, Michelle, but this was funny. So trying to make room in the pantry for things for kind of the emergency food, I found some random stuff, 2016 expiration, back of the refrigerator, terrifying science projects. So I've been trying to make sure that we're not cooking with things that are not safe. So that has been hilarious. Some of the items just made me fall on the floor laughing. But anyway, that's been an interesting experience. And then kind of a food challenge, what random item do I have in my pantry that I could use as an item with a recipe I've never done? So I've also been using that for inspiration.
We've been having fun doing some cooking, but I will tell you there have been at least 2 nights where we had popcorn for dinner. So there's
Same.
that too.
Cold cereal.
I actually pop popcorn myself. Like I have the kernels on the stove. So, and the cool thing is like, yeah, like if you try to put other seasoning on it, like my new thing is putting, I actually don't know how to pronounce it, so please forgive me, berberer. It's the Ethiopian seasonings, which is basically just like cinnamon, cayenne pepper, garlic powder, and like salt and pepper. So I've been having fun with that, trying new spices in my popcorn.
Ooh, that sounds good. I have that. I love
I
popcorn.
think if you're like a perfectionist like me, I think during this time, self-care might mean that you have to kind of forgive yourself for having popcorn with your children, you know, sometimes, or, you know, we're all kind of on survival mode. So I really had to like learn to let go and like maybe forget that spreadsheet that I would normally use for things and just survive.
Yes, totally. Same here. I'm not at work so much, but at home, and I share this with the team. I'm a super anal neat freak. Like when I come into the house normally, I want it to look like I could take a photograph. It would just be so perfect. I want to feel like I'm stepping into a serene, you know, beautiful space every day. And you can't really live like that every day, but I can. But when you live with other people, you can't. So that has always been a struggle for me. But last 2 weeks, I've let it go. Like I'm surprised that I've been okay with it too. Like there's clutter everywhere right now in the house, and like the old me a couple weeks ago would just like be blowing a gasket, would just not be able to handle that, and I would have to, because it's one of those. It's like it's the thing I could control. You know, the idea of letting go of things, I think is very important. Again, things at the end of the day, does it really matter if there's a pile of books somewhere that shouldn't be there? No. So I'm actually proud of myself for that, because that's a huge thing for me. I'd often been critiqued even by boyfriends and exes, you know, that I was too neat. So, so I've accomplished something in the last couple of weeks that I hadn't undone up to this point. Come organize my house. I would love to do that. I love doing stuff like that. So yeah, but someday when we can get out of our homes, right?
That's your calling. I am so sad I have to hang up now. I really enjoyed this opportunity. I just want to say thank you all just for giving us space and encouragement. I think this is really important during this time, is just to continue to encourage each other, because like I say, it's a roller coaster. And so just to be, you know, just to be kind to each other. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I hope everybody has a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Jeanette. Be well. Thanks,
Jeanette. I have to actually get off too. I'm supposed to be talking with my boss in 10 minutes.
Bye.
So,
Cynthia,
bye, everyone. Thank you all for indulging me. I'll see you all soon.
I'm going to head out as well. I think I'm going to take some time and make lunch for the 3 of us.
Yes. Oh, it's lunchtime, 12:30. Everyone has to eat.
Yes.
Bye. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you all.
Be well. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.